Hey, welcome everybody. This is Bill Fanning from Talk. I'm super excited you guys could be here. We are gonna just wait another minute or two as people make their way through the Zoom gauntlet, which is always interesting. And then we'll get underway and excited everybody's here. Um, as you can maybe see behind me, we're finally getting warm, sunny weather here in the Northeast, which is exciting.
And Michigan is finally getting warmer too,
Is
where
it,
I and hello everybody.
Brad, your coworker looks like he needs something.
Always, always. High maintenance.
Brad, that's so funny because I am the babysitter in the house. I just took my two kids that are home at the moment to the library. I said you cannot come back until 2:15. And I took my dog and I took my bag, I took my dog out because he likes to lay in the garage where the concrete is cold. And I said, Charlie, you're not coming back in until 2:15. So I have a house quiet and for myself. So I can totally relate.
Well, good. I hope we all have watches.
The oldest, the dog doesn't, but my oldest has a phone, so they should be okay.
Good.
All right. All right. Yeah, actually, it's funny. My youngest is texting me right now, so I'm sending her the please leave me alone sign. Um, which she'll completely ignore. And it's funny, I don't know how, I'm sure all of us have a wide range of children, but my text should be connected to Venmo or PayPal. Like I shouldn't even be involved. She should just be able to text me the adult. This would be a great AI app we should build. She could text me the dollar amount she wants, and I could set up go, no go parameters, and then it just Venmo her to her. So I could be out of the loop and be left alone. So
Yeah, ex-banker, that sounds like a haven for fraudsters.
yeah, oh, absolutely. It's I'm the Starbucks fun line. She's going to Starbucks and she wants that. What's that new drink with the little things in the little boppy balls in the bottom or whatever? So I just shot her $10. So she's off my plate for an hour. So we're good. Awesome. Well, guys, I'm super happy everybody's here. And I gave it a couple minutes. More people will be rolling in, but I wanted to get us going. And everybody can see my screen. I just want to check logistically it's working. Awesome. That's great. So a couple quick asks I always ask at the beginning and super excited to see some of you. But the goal of these is not just a conversation at you. It's a conversation for all of us to partake in. So if you have the ability to turn your camera on and join the discussion, that's awesome. If you're eating lunch or you're in a place where you can't, I totally get it. I've been there myself. But our goal is to talk about sourcing today and just have some fun and share some war stories and some learning lessons and go from there. So we have people who can join us from LinkedIn. If you're new or you're not a member of Talk, welcome. It's free. We talk and communicate in a private community about sourcing and talent acquisition and all kinds of aspects of people, problem, technologies. It's a very safe space to have these conversations. So if you'd like to join us, this QR code will bring you right in and it's free to sign up and please join us. We've got some great update conversations going on. So today we're talking about sourcing and going beyond job boards. Next week, we're going to discuss digital transformation. And then we also next week in Philadelphia, if anyone's in that area, we're doing a networking event in that evening in Rittenhouse Square. Um, we're not doing a webinar on July 3rd because it's the day before the 4th, and I didn't think we'd have many people coming. And then we're having a really fun conversation on July 10th. And it's really focused around the fact that everybody's using ChatGPT to spiff up their resume. As a matter of fact, I have a 20-year-old son, and that's how he takes a job, puts a job description in, attaches his resume, and says, make me a perfect fit. That's how he applies for every job he goes after. He doesn't even, and I don't even think he reads it when he's done. He just applies. But what's really interesting is from that, and I kind of said this to him, I was like, dude, make sure you can do the job. He's like, what? I was like, make sure you can, nothing's worse than getting fired 6 weeks in because you sent a resume saying you can do A, B, and C and you can't. And he was like, oh, they do that? I'm like, oh, hell yeah. So, um, so learning lesson for Gen Zs, good, which is good. But that's kind of what we're going to talk about is we get these perfect applicants. How can we make sure they can do the job? Which is a really interesting conversation. Whoops, I went too fast. One thing I just wanted to mention. So every year, Talk partners with RecFest. I love RecFest. So we just did a conference in Arizona 2 weeks ago called TalentSphere, and it was really fun. And the goal behind TalentSphere was to break down kind of some of the logistical and networking barriers that trade shows have and create more of a social retreat where we talked about things. Brano was able to come, and it was really fun. It was a very different experience. I love RecFest because it does some similar things, and it's a great environment for learning and networking. It's outdoors. You're in shorts and a t-shirt. It's warm. So I just wanted to share this with you. Out of all the conferences I've been to, I think they're doing something unique and different that has value, or they have thus far. I won't speak to the future. Um, what did the Hair Club for Men say? Past performance doesn't predict future results. So, but it's good. So I want to take a minute and introduce Brano. I've been talking to him for a little while, and he's got a really a great background around sourcing, and he's brought a lot of his practitioner experience into creating a platform to help solve a problem he saw in the industry. Definitely, Brian, if you want to take a minute, just kind of introduce yourself, that'd be great. And then we'll jump right in. The first thing I was going to do is just wanted to gather some information. So I'm going to launch a quick poll just to get some feedback. But Brian, before I do that, why don't you take a couple minutes and just introduce yourself?
Oh, absolutely. And thank you very much. And hello, everybody. So my name is Branjo Vargic. I'm obviously from my accent, not American. I originally come from Slovakia, country in Central Europe, but I haven't lived nor worked there for almost a decade and a half. I used to be in HR for about a decade. I was a consultant for 5 years, and then I kind of flipped to be in the execution role. So I was a CHRO for a major bank back home in my country. And then I left HR field and went into business. I did some M&A work. I did some all within financial services. I did a lot of digitalization projects. And I think that kind of led me back to where I am today, which is building a platform that combines what I've learned in technology and the inspirations that I've taken from other parts than HR and kind of applying that to a field of, in this particular case, talent sourcing or recruitment. And I'm sure we'll talk more about it. I have 3 kids. I'm 51, currently based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Prior to the US, my family lived in Saigon, Vietnam for 6 years, and that would be for a separate webinar. So I'm just going to leave it at that, Bill.
Which always has been a place that I've always wanted to visit. So, that's great. Thanks for the background. Awesome. Well, our goal, I put together just, and again, we can take this conversation in a number of different areas, and absolutely your questions and participation can drive the direction of it. And that's awesome. That's exactly what we want. But I tried to put together a little bit of an agenda just to kind of frame out what we were hoping to do. So we were looking at just doing a quick poll, which I'm going to share with you in just a second. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things we're seeing in the market. And I tried to put some language around it, but at the end of the day, inbound applicants always isn't enough, quality or quantity. There's a number of conversations we can have there. We're seeing a growth of vehicles that require a little more of a recruitment marketing background than traditional job boards used to. AI is definitely playing a role in that. And then I created a section where you could call share and steal, which is, well, we'll say, hey, here's a problem. Who's fixed it? Or what's some ideas? And we can share ideas and best practices with each other, which I think is really a great value of kind of doing these type of discussions. So I'm going to turn our poll on real quick just to kind of give us some framework. Hang on one sec. And all right, let me do that. All right, so I'm hoping everybody should see the poll that just came up. There's a couple questions around what are some of the biggest challenges we're facing in sourcing right now. So feel free to answer one or add as many as you want. And then from there, we'll kind of look at the results and talk a little bit about it. And it's funny, I was talking to a programmatic job board distributor yesterday that wanted to come in and partner with Talk. And I said to them, they said, well, what do you think about programmatic? I said, I think it's fantastic. So instead of wasting my money on one job board, you guys can waste it on hundreds all at once. And that's fabulous. And they didn't think that was as funny as I did. But I just always thought, programmatic to me is a very interesting engine, and there's a lot of people doing it. And I think some of them do it well, but some of them, it becomes hard to track and analyze. Hang on one second. I don't know what's causing that. All right. All right. So I ran the poll. Let me end the poll, and I'll share the results so we can take a look at them. So as we went through this, too many unqualified inbound applicants is something that I've heard a lot from Talk members at TalentSphere. We talked about it. We see it happening in the forums and in conversations like this. I wholeheartedly believe that job boards aren't delivering the results that they used to. What's interesting is the dynamics of job boards that I look at. And again, I don't have data. This is in my humble opinion moment. The cost of the job boards are going up. The conversion ratio is going down, right? So the cost per applicant, CPA, from a job board has never been higher. And the other aspect that I see as a challenge there is cost per quality applicant, somebody you want to engage, have that first line conversation, is often not part of the factor of how they charge you, which I think it should. Candidates ghost or drop off. Unsure how the best use of AI in top of funnel efforts. There's so many people jumping into that mainstay. It's really interesting. Testing new approaches, which I definitely want to talk about. And there's some people dropping stuff in there. Sieber, thanks for your thoughts on that. And yeah, programmatic can ebb or flow in positive or negative results. David, that's an interesting point of view. I've heard, I wholeheartedly agree with you, but I've heard a lot of different people's variations upon the source issue is the job description and the ATS and the recruiting issue.
Well, if you're talking about source of candidate, that's one thing. But if you're talking about sourcing as in
Yeah.
a complementary part of recruiting life cycle, which is the top of funnel, then I would say I would disagree. I would say that's more of a job description issue because if you're getting the wrong applicants, you probably have a bad, poorly written job description. It could be your ATS. Some of the ATS systems make it where people just click and then mass applies to a lot of roles that they're not qualified for, what I would call serial applicants. And lastly, it's a recruiting issue. If you're not posting your job in the right spots, you're going to attract all sorts of unqualified applicants. But if you're talking about sourcing, I didn't pick any of these answers because I don't think they're necessarily what I would say is a top sourcing issue. I would say for sourcers, which I'm a practitioner of, sourcers have the issue right now is there's a lot of like disparate tools that don't integrate into one like solution. There are some attempts at single solutions, but for the most part, it's still like you do this for that and this for that and that for that. And they don't necessarily integrate with your CRMs or ATS systems. And then you have CRMs and ATS systems that claim that they're all in one solutions, but they're not. So that's what I'm saying. So I'll be quiet now and let you continue.
No, awesome. I super appreciate the feedback, and I think you nailed it. There's definitely some good thoughts in there, so I appreciate it. And Ryan, I think also nailed something really important, which is most people don't read the job descriptions. That, and I think that's 100% true. So, so thanks everybody for participating in that. And Brian, I'd love to, you've been working and talking with a lot of companies. What are some of your thoughts in terms of sourcing?
I'm actually going to react to what David said, and I fully agree that the granularity or the number of solutions that are out there at the moment, and they're popping up more and more and more, is actually something, David, that is also being said in the investors world. TalentSquare is right now heavily searching for investors, and one of the feedbacks that we are listening from them and hearing from them is themselves saying, you know, you are each focusing on one problem, but you guys need to start integrating or somehow make it into a, you know, a bit bigger umbrellas, because otherwise it's just, we're not going to invest in it. So it's not only from the user side, but it's also from this other kind of a, you know, strange angle. You know, I mean, let me put it this way. When I was, and small disclaimer, this was a decade ago, and technology has gone a long, long way in the last decade. But one of the key elements that I was always kind of thinking and looking at when I was the CHRO was the efficiency of the recruitment process. My within one calendar year, on average, the 6 years that I worked for a bank, my headcount needs in, or you know, how many positions I needed to fulfill was about 5 to 550 roughly, unless it was a year where we grew in terms of headcount. I was receiving on average 50,000 CVs applying for those 500 open positions. And so this was a huge inefficiency. But my main element was, how do I use the 49,500 for two things? One, what can I do as a practitioner to turn them into my ambassadors and potential clients, because otherwise it's a wasted resource. And two, obviously, how do I keep them interested in me as an employer, even though they might not be fit for that job? And so that was a bit more complicated in 2011. Today, when, you know, if I were to get 55,000 CVs for 500 empty positions in a year, there's a number of tools that enable to do automated talent matching. And one of the things that could be happening is I am communicating with those 49,000 backwards saying, hey, by the way, you are not fit for this position, but based on our analysis, you could be, you know, underwriter, or you could be this and that. And if you want to keep engaged with us, here's a newsletter link, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the kind of things that, you know, in terms of inbound, I wouldn't say that the job boards are out of work or they are going to disappear. They are, in my view, particularly slow in transformation and looking in other ways how they could serve who they're supposed to serve. But I am definitely experiencing from the feedback from our early adopters and our customers that job boards pricing are increasing. For example, for staffing agencies, I'm even hearing, I had a great call last week from someone very similar organization like Talk, that only does staffing agencies. And indeed, in Great Britain, made a move where for the longest time, the services for staffing agencies for a certain period of time were for free. Now they're putting a price tag on it. And there's 14,000 staffing agencies in UK alone, and they are almost getting into revolt. So, you know, there needs to be other ways. And that's one of the things that we, you know, when we started our journey at TalentSquare was this, how and what can be done with this great technology that's literally making quantum leaps every other week. What can be done to help out with the sourcing, because the job boards and the inbound traffic is just starting to be not enough, whether it's in terms of quantity or quality.
Yeah. It's a really interesting point that you just mentioned. I don't know how many people saw, I'm sure a lot of us saw on LinkedIn that the US operations for Monster and CareerBuilder are shutting down, like completely, like, hey, you're probably all going to be out of work. And that just, as a former Monster guy, that's one of my early career areas, where we were giving away 2 cars every quarter in the parking lot for people who hit their number or beat their, you know, 2 top salespeople, to going out of business now. It just made me sit back and think of how dynamically changed the job board market is. And somebody had mentioned in the chat around the sales methodology. I think it's just a sales methodology of Indeed, not to be negative on them, but when you want your job to perform better, the first thing they say is, okay, spend more. And so all you're getting is increased clicks. And so that pay-per-click model, paper applicant model, you know, moves towards a volume to play. And, you know, that's where I always struggled with, because for those who know, I used to run sales at the Ladders back when it was pre 2009, 2010. It's kind of where I got my teeth really introduced to job board performance and stuff like that. And it was really interesting to you, because what is missing in that equation is the quality aspect. right? It's great that you can pay per applicant, but it's got to be an applicant you want. And so how do you argue and fight with that? So
Um,
uh
Bill, if I may, just to add on it, one of the things that, and there's a lot of research out there on it. One of the, key, and I'm sure well-known problems with the job boards is they attract active candidates, right? So, and that's only about 30 to 35% of the market, depending on what research you look at. And so, 70% or what have you is kind of being left out, left out there without attention or with different ways how to get their attention. What's interesting about active candidates, and again, this is our bread and butter, so we looked into research. What's interesting about passive candidates in comparison to active candidates is two things. One, once and if you are able to convince them, whether through your advertisement, et cetera, then their loyalty is much greater than active candidates once and if they join. And two, what's even more important, and I will find those links on that academic research and share with you so we can share it later. What's more important is the speed at which the passive candidates are able to get to what's considered on that particular job a standard performance is about 3 times greater than with active candidates. And I think that can be really calculated into how much money you're actually saving, even though you might spend a little bit more on attracting passive ones, but that money just literally comes back because they get up to speed so much faster.
sure, sure. So I'm curious, just maybe to throw this out to everybody. And Ryan, that is a great aspect, that the shift is just the marketing mix of that shift in social platforms is really interesting to me. Uh, but what I'm curious of is, so we've got all these different changes happening. What are some of the sourcing hacks or strategies that maybe we as a team have employed that have helped resolve some of these things? Because I mean, I think we're framed out at a high level. Hey, some of these things aren't working like they used to, but what are some of the ways that we're finding improvement? And I'm kind of throwing that out to everybody, and I'm just curious what we've seen work or help.
From what perspective?
Um, that's a great question. I think that we've talked a little bit about unqualified applicants or people not applying. As a sourcer, David, you talked about the disconnection between the disparate technologies we're using and that causing some of the challenges. I'm curious if you found workarounds for that, or how have you approached that type of issue in your own world to make it more optimized to get things done?
So you can leverage some AI tools to help fill in the gaps, but a lot of it is basically like I would describe it as like a toolbox approach. You have a hammer for hammering and screwdriver, whatever. So I just set myself up with a mixture of Chrome extensions and some paid tools and whatnot to account for that. Of course, using whatever the company I'm working for has, but otherwise I supplement that with my own tooling. But as far as like some of the biggest challenges I would say within sourcing, I think that there's a transition of or a culmination of a lot of more advanced skill sets that are necessary in today's marketplace. So
Yeah.
with the advancement in AI, even traditional software engineers, which historically have been, I do a lot of tech. So traditional software engineers are, in risk of losing their job. I believe it was Microsoft did some layoffs recently, and about 30% of their software engineers are basically going to be replaced with AI coding. So small and medium businesses are using AI to, build companies faster, especially like Gen Z. They have a team of 10, and they're scaling a company that historically would have to have hundreds or thousands of employees to get to the billion-dollar mark, and they're doing it with 10 people in AI. So the skill sets and knowledge base and background and advancements in technology as all as and also come together with the skills necessary to operate it all, I think is making it for a lot more advanced skill sets within the roles that you're trying to fill. And that's what I think is making it more challenging. So think that the key is to simplify all this technology, because I know right now the biggest dollars are being spent on in the startup world is on AI products or AI technologies and solutions. So just if you look at it from a talent acquisition perspective alone, there's so many AI tools and people don't know what to use, right? So it's becoming noise at this point. So I think there needs to be a simplification of that, and a way of knowing what you need to use and how to use it.
Yeah.
And also skills-based hiring is rising in practice as well versus some of the more legacy approaches.
Yeah, I love the growth of skills-based hiring, by the way, because I think that um like watching my son, I'm like, do you even know what this job does? Because your resume says you can kill it, and I don't think you even understand the role. So, when you get there, if they test your skills, it might be an ugly interview. So, but it's interesting in that perspective. And oh, by the way, I'm going to give a shameless talk plug. We are putting together a class with a couple people that we're going to launch this fall called Talent Engineering. And the idea behind it is to go address that multitude of AI tools out there and how to use those disparate tools to engineer a candidate journey and the humanistic aspects of it and what that could look like. And by the way, I'm not teaching it. I have some people from the industry who are not from vendors, but are like Trent Cotton or folks who are really industry experts across a number of technologies to come and help and talk about, hey, here's how to pick an AI tool, here's what to consider, or here's who to look at, or things like that. So I think that could be interesting. So
And Bill, David, one comment to that. I 110% agree with what you're saying in terms of learning what tool to use for what. I'll make a parallel with the current OpenAI. We all, or at least in my case, I started with ChatGPT. Today, I'm using 4 different ones rather frequently, and 2 others, Gemini and Copilot, on the side. It took me a while to learn which ones I use for what in terms of my work. And that was a learning process, but that's essentially the same parallel to make sure that you're picking the right tools for the right tasks. And then, of course, the integration of it, whether on the side of the vendor or on the side of the company, is becoming more and more important.
yeah, awesome. So one area, just maybe to shift the focus a little bit, because I think, David, you touched on it, and I've seen it talked a little bit in chat, the social aspect in the way we reach people has dynamically changed. And I'm really curious when we think about recruitment marketing, how has that started to creep into the skill sets or the scopes of how you think about? Because and again, I observe a lot of conversations, but it seems like a lot of people are shifting the way in the tools or the communication vehicles they're using to reach passive and active applicants. I'm wondering how we're kind of approaching that. And I know that's a broad question, but the first thing I would think of is how are we thinking about the vehicles that we're using to reach the candidates, like social media, and how is that grown within our recruiting, the scope of what we're doing for sourcing?
Hey, Bill, this is Ryan. So I kind of mentioned social a little bit, and I've been on these calls before, but I was at a different company. So I went from tech to like blue collar jobs and very different skill sets, right? Like I've changed worlds and we're high volume where I'm at today now. And one of the things that when I moved here was we really got into social marketing and finding candidates just because those individuals, that's where people are, to the point of like truck drivers. I'm hiring truck drivers in very rural areas of Pennsylvania, but they don't want to apply to a job. You're never going to be able to find their phone number or email and source them. But if you're in front of them while they're in social, you can do like a Facebook essentially ad form. We're capturing if they have their CDL, their tanker endorsement, and if they live near a location and they do that, bam, I already got them. And then I got their basic information. It's almost like, and it's a completely different approach. If you look at sourcing back when I used to do it before, I mean, and even in general, I always like, oh, LinkedIn, I could find everybody on there. And, even LinkedIn these days, even for professional talent, has kind of evolved. There's too many tools and all this other stuff. And that's why I like when David said, you got to kind of find your toolbox of kind of what works for you,
Yeah.
because almost to the point where I feel like companies are going to need their own talent acquisition, like tech teams now, because there's all these tools, but how do you use them all? and use the right ones for your organization, because it's not going to be cookie cutter for every company.
No.
But social for us has been huge. And honestly, to the point of whether it's branding, finding the right skill sets, we're finding truck drivers, diesel mechanics, things like that, that through these social channels, and then it follows them, it creeps them, it's beautiful. And we're working with those like programmatic partners where you can do it through Facebook and Google ads, and you have to think beyond just your normal job ads, because I got frustrated with Indeed. I spend a lot of money with them, and all of a sudden I do a hiring event and I get double the applicants, and it's like, why am I spending more money just to get more people? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But now we're kind of using those programmatic partners to make the money work where it makes sense, and we're spending less. Like, it's just things like that. But it's now a mix. Sourcing isn't just LinkedIn anymore. It's not just your typical things. It's how do you brand it? How do you market it? How do you go to Facebook? How do you use in this tool, that tool? Unfortunately, I don't think there's ever going to be a one-stop shop solution, but you have to find the toolbox that makes sense for you.
Yeah, I'm in lockstep with you. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was smiling more and more as you were speaking about truck drivers, because when I moved to the US, I actually moved for a job to be a CEO of a manufacturing company, and I was doing TalentSquare on the side, and then just kind of switched. And so welders was another category that all of these positions that have the element in them, so to speak, that if I don't get a job, I can do it as a sole proprietor from my garage, are exactly the kind of positions that, the Facebook, because the welders was a huge problem for me. I applied some tech a year and a half ago, and bam, I had 8, and I chose 2. And in welding, I needed the 3 categories: the aluminum, stainless, and steel. So thank you for the comment, because totally and absolutely, Facebook has become a great place to hire for specific jobs.
Yeah, 100%. And Ryan, the other thing I just wanted to mention is I think you nailed it. I think that there is going to become a role on larger TA teams that's going to be focused on the tech and building that toolbox, which is why we tried to put together some way to get our arms around that with the talent engineer course, right? Just what does that look like? How would you approach doing something? How would you approach building that toolbox for the company you're at? So I think that's awesome. And Jasmine, you made a great observation that the candidates, I think, are doing a ton of research and leveraging social media more and more than LinkedIn to figure out who you are, what your company's like, are people happy when they work there? So that's really interesting. And that goes back to the recruitment marketing idea of how you put your brand out on social media, I think is really important. When we look at, I'm curious what to go to that point. Have you guys, I'm sure some of us have, so maybe it's not if you, but how you created a brand or a campaign with social job descriptions and employer branding to kind of resolve that? Because I would think there's a lot of opportunities out there for a CDL driver. And they would see a lot of stuff in their social media. So the question to me, like, as you're putting that out there, how do you get the hook into somebody who wanted to learn more? Has anyone tackled that?
A lot of the companies I work for, we partner with the marketing team to basically make sure that the company's values and brands and mission are very clearly stated.
Yeah.
And sometimes do like press releases or sharing interesting developments within the company that would be relevant or of interest to people like that showcase the values and whatnot being lived out. Usually like a blog post or for tech, like the white papers or tech talks or things like that are going to be of interest to that audience. So I'm sure you're mentioning truckers. I haven't recruited for that, but I have some family members that are truckers, and I know that a lot of the way to get their attention would be through like the truck gas stations and like billboards and things like that, or being able to reach them where they're at, because a lot of them will live out of their trucks if they're over the road. But we would do it through targeted messaging, like Facebook marketing for them based upon their region or a certain mile radius of a zip code, for example. Billboards, you could sponsor or co-sponsor different events that are relevant to them. If you're talking about on social media, you can have it where anytime they access whatever site, it basically showcases your company and that you're hiring. I know like on LinkedIn, you can do that.
Yeah.
But I think it's boiling down to where you got to figure out where the people that are practitioners of that job, where they talk shop, where
Yeah.
they evolve, and that's where you got to like figure out what channels are relevant and viable, and that's how you get their attention. But
No, I think that's awesome.
clearly aligned marketing that reflects all the way back up is what I would say.
I once ran a campaign for truck drivers in a previous job when I was recruiting and helping somebody, and we used those cards. Like when you walk into a truck stop or a gas station, there's usually a rack with different little cards in it. And we started putting employment opportunities in those, and those work really well because the trucker will walk in, see it, grab it, and it had a very simple QR code that they could use to learn more information. I was skeptical at first, but it actually converted extremely well for the cost.
And Bill, I will add on to what David was saying. So the way that TalentSquare came about was prior to TalentSquare, we were running a online social media campaigns for job vacancies and employer brands for our customers, and for about 3 years. So we ran about 8,000 campaigns all combined, and there were two rather small but very important elements or data that we collected. So one was around using videos instead of static visuals. And the data that we had showed us that the video cannot be longer than 8 to 12 seconds. And it has about 30 to 40% higher clickability or raised interest when a banner or when the advertisement banner includes video. And long behold, when I was talking about that one campaign that we did for welders, we just shot a video with an iPhone, cut it with an iPhone, and used it as a part of the advertisement for that particular job that I was looking for. The second piece of data that we've collected that has played a huge role in what we've then built an automated solution in TalentSquare is the fact that 60% plus of the recruitment or on the other side of the candidate is happening on mobile. And if your advertisement, whatever it is, your tool, your sourcing tool is not adjusted to on the mobile and being able to use it on the mobile, you're not going to succeed. And a great example is requesting CVs or resumes and motivation letters. If people are watching it on or looking at the banner on the mobile phone, it just creates another friction if you ask them for a CV because if they do have it, they have it in the cloud. They don't know how to get to cloud to upload it on the phone, et cetera, et cetera. So this is another element to, at least in our experience, to have in mind. It's more and more mobile and less PC.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. It's really kind of interesting in terms of the toolbox and the skill set. I'd love to spend a little more time talking about the tools that we've found to be useful because maybe sharing some of that's helpful. Brano, I wanted to give you just 5 minutes or so to talk a little bit about TalentSquare. And we could do that. You could share some thoughts on that. And then we could talk about other tools people are using and what's helping.
I'll just do 3 minutes to not to take away too much time from discussions because I think that the discussion is I humbly believe even greater learning than me talking. TalentSquare. Prior to TalentSquare, the three of us, which is the three founders, we were running a small agency where we were helping our clients and customers to set up the social media job vacancy advertising campaign online manually. So we would literally, and we were HR practitioners, all three of us, different walks of life in terms of HR. So we literally went to e-commerce guys, we hired some PPC specialists, and we started learning. Launched some campaign, collected some data, looked at what worked, what didn't work, retweak the targeting and wash, rinse, and repeat. And there were some great learnings over those 3 years that we're doing this. So about a year and a half ago, one of the key problems that we discovered when we were doing it manually, and we imagined and then were confirmed by our customers that this was happening internally on their side, was the fact that, especially with Meta, but obviously with Google Ads and with LinkedIn, it's even escalated. it was complicated for them to create those campaigns directly in Facebook or in Meta. There's just so many steps, business ad manager, et cetera, et cetera. And the other issue, especially in the larger enterprises, was the fact that they were often getting into some sort of a debate, to put it mildly, between HR and marketing in terms of who owns the social media, who owns the accounts. And then, and even now we have conversations with marketing and with HR people where marketing is saying, I will not let HR touch my very fragile setup of my Facebook business ad manager because they will completely ruin it. And I can't let them do it. So I will take their request for a campaign. And then if and when I have time, I will set it up. And vice versa. HR is saying, well, marketing is blocking me. I cannot have my own social media account and so on and so forth. So we took all this experience, we took all the data that we collected, and we took all the pain points that there are currently for Meta. We are working right now on starting integrating TikTok, but that's for a separate discussion. We took all those pain points and put them in the backend side of things. We created a tool that now enables anyone to launch the campaign without knowing what's in the nuts and bolts of Facebook or Instagram setup. That's as simply as I can put it.
Nice.
Especially, and the secret sauce obviously is the targeting, which is now automated, and there is some AI involved in, and again, all of it in the background.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
It does, but it's very cool. Thanks for sharing that. I think it's really interesting. What I love, and obviously I get to talk to a myriad of vendors, but I love seeing the identification of a problem and the intent to solve or help solve that problem by creating a solution. I think that's always a powerful path. So thanks for sharing that. I did have, Jasmine, I had one question for you. You had, a couple minutes ago, you had mentioned that you do a lot of entry positions and that you do a lot of testimonials and career paths. Just because I think that's awesome, but it sparked a question. How do you communicate that? Is that in the job description? You guys do videos? Can you share a little bit about that? I think that'd be helpful.
Oh yeah, we have videos in the job description. So you'll see the job description, then you'll see a little video under it that has one of our people that face of found ever showing what you would be doing or common questions that would be asked about the position. But during this, that's separate from the social media. So if we have somebody, for instance, if we want to say, hey, do we have any veterans on site that would like to do a little testimonial? We can have a picture of them or a video on our TikTok and Meta, including Instagram and Facebook, and just show like, this is how I started, this is how I transitioned from being a veteran to this position, and this is how I've grown. And we always find that we get a lot of likes, and people want to see not only the people that haven't looked at our company, but also the people at our company. It helps them to be like, oh cool, my friend's on Facebook, let me show everyone.
Very cool. No, I think that's great. Oh, go ahead, Brenna.
Oh, just a small comment, Jasmine, and thank you for sharing that. Absolutely, 100%. Bravo, bravo. That's all I have to say. I was mentioning that I was actually did some crazy travels, and over the 72 hours, I went to Europe and back, which was absolutely insane. But that's beside the point. But I was pitching to investors in Europe our solution, and towards my last slide of the presentation was I actually took a screenshot, and I haven't done it in like 6 months, of my screen time on my iPhone. And looked at how much time I spent on social media. And so my main point of that slide was that Statista.com reported that in 2024, on average, all eligible mankind spent about 2.5 hours on social media daily. And so maybe not now, but I encourage you, if you haven't done so for a long time, have a look at your screen time and how much time you spend. I was shocked when I found out mine, and not very positively, even though social media is my work tool. So it's just kind of there is a shift happening in terms of how we consume information. And whether it's information about the new jobs or it's information about anything else, it's moving there. It's moving to videos because the interaction of that. So Jasmine, bravo.
Yeah, and the data retention from a video, I don't remember these stats, but I remember it was like 4 or 5x from text to video. So seeing it and hearing it on a video is really meaningful and helpful. So I wanted to take a couple minutes and talk about the concept of a toolbox. And again, I know not the same toolbox is not perfect for everybody, but I'm really curious what some of us have found as effective tools to help. David, I wholeheartedly understand the kind of the analogy of the problem of all the disparate systems, but I'd love to talk a little bit about tools that we're finding useful. And this is kind of what I call, share and steal, but what are we finding that's helping us solve these issues? Yeah, and Ryan, that is a really interesting question. And Ryan just put in chat for everyone who didn't see it, that it starts with the ATS system and the ability to integrate. I think that's mission critical because there's so many tools out there that position themselves as the next best thing since sliced bread, but then they generate such a high level of manual effort that it's almost not worth. From my experience, it has almost been not worth the bang is not worth the juice is not worth the squeeze. I forget the right. Pick the
Yeah.
analogy of your choice.
That's why I said it, because at the end of the day, like if you don't have a good central tool and then everything feeding into it, whether it's analytics, and honestly, one of the forums I asked if someone ever used Pinpoint, and we actually are transitioning to it. There's some good automation. There's things that feed into it. It actually solves a lot of our problems here. It's very different than other places I've been, but at the end of the day, that's going to be our core. And then we're integrating like programmatic partners. We're integrating other tools. At the end of the day, it will be one central platform, which today we don't have. So it's one of those things. I feel like it always starts with that, and there's always going to be things that exist outside of it that can make sense that might not be able to live in. But I think you really got to think about what's your core technical ecosystem, and then the second stage is like, okay, what else outside of that maybe I can upload it in, or other ways that just so you're not creating more, I say more clicks. You don't want to have your team clicking more or doing extra work, because at the end of the day, then they're pulling back from what they're supposed to be doing. So.
Yeah.
Ryan, 100% agree. I will make a small note on it because that's our daily bread and butter is how do we integrate our solution with the existing ATS. What we are experiencing what we are experiencing is that there is some blockage, so to speak, that especially job boards are starting to put on other tools to be integrated. And that kind of becoming a red tape, which I think it's short-sighted on the part of the job boards, but they obviously have their own reasons. In terms of integration of ATS, there's one of the lessons that we are learning as we go, and we do integrations now on a user per user basis. Obviously, we would like to automate it, but one of the things that we are we are experiencing is sometimes we have customers or enterprises that will say, I want to integrate our ATS with your solution, and this is how I want to integrate it. And we look at it and we go, well, but you know what? We can, but your process is broken a bit. Let's not apply tech to a semi-broken process. Let's fix the process first, and then we apply the tech, because then it just leads to more disasters. And that seems to be another story where I don't have a problem integrating through APIs our solution with ATS, but first the question needs to be asked on the side of the user. Hey, is my flow and how I use my ATS reflecting the needs that I have?
Yeah. I think that's a great, and I appreciate that thought, Brian. I think that's a great question, Tracy, for programmatic partners for high volume blue collar workers. And Ryan, you put some out there. The only one I would add, and only because I've seen them work well for blue collar, is Talru out of Austin. I've known a couple people that I've worked with that have used it and got success from it. Outside of that, that's my only endorsement. Certainly don't have any relationship with them, but I heard that they do a good job for hourly. And Get Job is another one that I see on LinkedIn a lot talking about that. So,
and Bill, high volume is somewhere where, that's TalentSquare current space.
yeah, awesome.
Yeah. If anybody is interested, I'm more than happy to talk after or later. That's exactly one of our key verticals in terms of is staffing agencies and recruitment agencies. Yes.
Oh, cool. Awesome. And I'm going to share a little bit of content from Brano so you can reach out if you want to learn a little bit more about TalentSquare at the end. Tracy, the companies I were talking about was Talroo, Talroo. How they came up with that name, I'm not sure, but they're out of Austin, Texas. And they have been a good one that I had somebody use before. And the second one that a friend of mine named Dan Sapir runs is JobGet, that promotes themselves a lot on LinkedIn. But I also think that what Brano does a little bit differently is more on the recruitment marketing and aspect side, on the social side, which we just talked about the value of. So I think that's actually something that we could be really valuable as well. What else, what other aspects of the social media um, have we dealt with effectively? So one of the things that I've always found is a challenge with social media is views and clicks are great, or thumbs ups are great, but they don't turn into applies. And so I'm curious, is how are some people working to make that conversion happen from the social media aspect? Like, it's great to see a video on TikTok and say, "Hey, that's awesome, I like it." But I'm just curious how we've come up with the video messaging or the approach to cause it to convert to an apply. I'm curious if anyone's done anything effective in that area.
Just quick, don't make it look like it's from HR. Like, you know what I mean? Like, make it as real, personable, people in the field as possible. When I was
Yeah.
at Dick's, we had a program where it was a part of our ATS, but essentially it sent links out to everybody in the company and they could create their own whatever, off their phone, testimonials, and then you could click on different jobs, and they were all real, and like some look scripted, but as they look scripted and they're all that, people are just gonna keep swiping through to the next. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really, really good observation. I think that's something I've seen that's really been pretty cool is some of the just people talking about their job that for me I thought was awesome because it's just a person, and it looks like it's a mobile device. It's not one of those well-crafted, perfect lighting, stage photos. It's a guy sitting there, a barista making a cup of coffee saying, "Hey, here's why I like to work here." And this is, it's talking about the brand, it's talking about the career ladder, it's talking about a bunch of things we've mentioned, but I think that's awesome. So thanks for that.
And just Ryan, you are just so preaching to a choir. I'm so happy to hear what you're saying. Um, uh, um, that's one of the things that our customers starting. We are having some early adopters here in the US as well, and so our tool enables them to launch the campaigns, and then they start. The clicks are coming in, the number of impressions, and then the clicks that they land on the landing page of that particular job vacancy, et cetera, et cetera. And then they somehow often are going, well, I didn't get enough conversion from clicks to actually leaving the contact. And I say, well, let's have a look at what you have used in terms of the marketing collateral in your campaign. And then, we have a look at it together. And I go, I always, almost always, when there is a complaint, I didn't get enough candidates, even though I got enough impressions and enough clicks that landed on the page. Almost always, the element is, does your commercial or does your visual stand out? And almost always, the answer is not a whole lot. And this element of and they use the job description and they don't adjust the job description, so it's a technical document instead of a marketing piece. I think that the skill set that is more and more pressure on the HR teams, or the fine borderline between marketing and HR, whatever that borderline in each company is. This is a skill that HR needs to get if HR is to be, continue to be in charge of or to be responsible for the employer branding. And this is something that, in my view, is improving, but it's got a long way to go. I mean, garbage in, garbage out. Sorry to be so expressive, but if the expression of who we are as a company is not consumable on social media, it's not gonna get the clicks. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I think that's a great option. And it's really interesting to look at the um, percentage of people that do their job search via social. I'm sorry, via mobile and social. That, like, if there was a way to, and I broke those percentages down generationally a couple months ago, we talked about it. But depending on what you're looking to hire, and this goes back to the point that David said, which I think was spot on, is understanding where they are to put the right message in front of them in terms of sourcing is so mission critical. And when you look at millennial, Gen Z, and certainly truck drivers, high volume hiring, a lot of those types of jobs, I mean, they are living 3 to 5 hours a day on social media. And by the way, Brano, I check screen time every 48 hours because my kids have guides or goals that they're trying to hit. And if you don't inspect it, you can't expect it. So they see me coming like a drill sergeant, like, all right, give me the phone.
Hey, Bill, I mean, I can only, I've spent, I have a very much an approach of management by walking around. In other words, I spent a lot of time with my manufacturing boys when I was in manufacturing, and every break, and they would get 4 or 5 a day, 15 minutes here, lunch break, etc. That's all that was happening during the break. They were on social media, on their phones. That was the downtime, and it was predominantly Facebook and Instagram. That's all they did.
Yep.
The other thing about social media is that different platforms resonate with different demographics and user bases. So, on top of all that we do already in talent acquisition, I think that we really have to master digital marketing techniques at least, and do a better job, because a lot of times the messaging that companies put out, especially the enterprise companies that have been around for a long time and they do things a certain way and there's very compliant and very regulated, and they use the same cookie cutter messaging that they've used for the last 20 years. And it's basically what I call corporate speak. And if the corporate speak isn't personalized and authentic, meaning if your words don't match what people see in the marketplace, you're basically that's a turnoff. And especially with Generation Z and Millennial, and I'm sure other generations as well, if it basically comes across as if you're lying or that you're full of, you know what. So I think that's the key is to show. I think somebody mentioned images or like a short video shorts that somebody that's working there, what it's like, and like someone that's real, like someone that if somebody has a question, they can reach out to them. And also from a diversity perspective, if you're trying to attract diverse talent and all you have is, the same, white males or, you don't show diversity representation of your employees, that's authentic. And also if you say it and you want to make sure that it's highlighted and on your website as well, because sometimes it's mentioned, but it's not like explicitly expressed. And research is being done, and candidates will, like, if you use some of the more advanced messaging platforms, you can track when they open it, how many times they open, what systems they open it from. You can see how many times, what links they click, and it gives you a lot of insights into what candidates are doing. And a lot of it is research, especially in in the IT world. A lot of research is done before they will respond to your message, and that's if they believe it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
David, I'm gonna react to it because I cannot help myself, because you are. I'm smiling because you're totally preaching to the choir, and in a good sense. Um, um, One of the things that we were doing heavily when we were trying to start to build the automation part of the campaign launching was trying to behave like passive candidates and taking inspiration from e-commerce. E-commerce has done this to the pinpoint. If I type in today that I'm looking for a couch, and then I'll get the first website, the first thing that they will tell me is you get a 10% discount on your next purchase if you leave me an email. Make it as easy as possible to lead generation, right? We've done a lot of mystery shopping, if you will, us behaving as passive candidates, going into whether clicking on some of the enterprise banners online or just going to their career website. And most of the what you call legacy systems or the legacy large enterprises will make it so complicated for me to apply that I said I'm giving up. It's the same that e-commerce, it's defined as an abandoned basket. I abandoned basket because they asked me to create an account, to create password, then I had to prove my identity. I understand why they're doing it, because they want to have that integration into the ATS and so on and so forth. But in terms of the passive candidates, this is complete turnoff. And so, how do we as a recruiters make that process as seamless as possible? Because the passive candidates is the pool that we want to attract.
Yeah, 100%. So, well, guys, listen, I just put my slide back up. If anyone would love to have learn a little bit more about TalentSquare and or talk with Brano a little bit more, because I have been fortunate to have that experience, and he is a wealth of knowledge and ideas, which I love. You can grab some time with him. That's his Calendly link, and to learn a little bit more about TalentSquare. I'll send this out to everybody when we're done. But I always like to try and be respectful of time, because I know we got other meetings to get to and things to do. So it's 2 o'clock. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate your time and your focus. And we'll talk again soon. Thanks, everybody, very much.
Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day, all.
Bye-bye.